over from that
It
point.
really was.
He had a slightly better QBR this time.
He got
had
16.
Did he?
He had a 22, right? 22 overall.
It was 22. I thought it was like 16.
Okay, I think it was 22, but the first time it was 9.
Yikes.
But to your point, whole lot of empty calories in the second half. And he did make a couple of good throws in the second half, but it was way too little, way too late.
Yeah.
So all season long, I sat over here saying, how's Green Bay doing this? I don't get it. I kept telling you, Green Bay is the flip side of my Cowboys, because my Cowboys somehow, you say, how did they lose that game? And with Green Bay, I kept saying, how did they win that game?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they won that game. And it came all the way around to yesterday, and they got exposed for the frauds they were all year. They were frauds, and they were actually 14-3 frauds coming into this game. 14-3 is pretty great. I don't know if you can fraud your way to 14-3, but they did. And Aaron Rodgers said after the game yesterday that he felt like he couldn't explain how they'd gotten that far. So he started feeling like the last few days, it's just meant to be. We're going to go win this game because we can't explain how we got here.
Right.
It's going to continue.
So you won't be able to explain how we got to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Well, it didn't work that way.
Right.
Because I think deep down in their heart of hearts and in the backs of their minds, that 37-8 just destroyed their psyches. And we went back and forth last week, you and I, about, remember, Kyle Shanahan said, you have to forget. It's irrelevant what happened in the 37-8 destruction game.
Right.
And I said, well, it's not irrelevant in the Green Bay psyche because they know they got destroyed.
Yeah.
And yesterday they came out like, we can't do this. And I was texting back and forth with our friend Lil Wayne this morning because he's just devastated. Sorry about that, Wayne.
Well, how's he doing?
But the point was he agreed with me. In the end, the 49ers were just better than the Packers. But to Wayne's point, they weren't that much better because the defense just didn't want to tackle anybody for at least a half. They did a little better in the second half.
Skip, I can see if it's Henry, though. Skip, I can see you don't want to tackle a 6'4", 260-pound man. But these guys are built for speed. If you look at the way they built Coleman, I went out with the shoulder injury.
He did right away.
But Skip, they might not have a back that's maybe Coleman is 200 pounds. But these guys are built for speed. But guess what? You ever know anything? Did anybody know who TD was? Anybody know who Mike Anderson or Reuben Drones? These no-name guys that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you're like, he did. Why did nobody want him?
The stories, it's impressive. Yeah.
So what a story is Raheem Mostert, because he's 5'11", 180 pounds. Think about 180.
Yeah. That's thin.
5'11".
And at Purdue, he didn't even play running back till he was a junior because he's a gadget guy. He's a return specialist because he is a track man.
You could tell the way he runs.
He won some Big Ten hurdles and sprint championships. So he can fly.
Right.
And yet this is his 7th NFL team. So 6 teams said no to him.
Right.
And he said he keeps a list of all of his cut dates. Before every game, he looks at all of his cut dates. Philly said that he wasn't drafted, but they had him and said no. Miami said no. Baltimore said no. Cleveland said no. The Jets said no. And Chicago said no to Raheem Mostert, who finally fell into Kyle Shanahan heaven.
Yep.
Because he was made for this. It's that outside zone. You know, let him get outside where you're just zone blocking.
Right.
And you're blowing people off the football.
You get one cut. Bobby Turner, who's the running back coach, was there with Mike Shanahan. He came with Mike in '95. And everywhere Kyle has been, Bobby has gone with him. He's the best running back coach in football. Skip, when you got that kind of speed, you say, son, look, put your right foot in the dirt and put your left foot in your dirt and come downhill. Skip, you see him going through the line? He doesn't even accelerate. He's like, I'm gone. He's running so it doesn't look like he's running. They said he had 9 runs. I'm looking at it like 9 runs of 15+ miles an hour. Do you know, as a running back, to get that kind of, to generate that kind of speed that quickly, so he hits a crease, it's over.
Right, and he doesn't look that pretty of a runner. It doesn't look like he's flying,
but he's like
flying.
He could glide.
He was. No, I agree. In the first half, he gets 160 on 14 carries. That's outrageous. That's the most yards in a playoff game. I saw this morning. You have to go back to the 1963 AFL championship game.
Right.
And it was Keith Lincoln. This is way before your time, but I do remember him for the Chargers. That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's the last time anybody got 160 or more in the first half. What? Well, you're blown out, man. It's 27-0.
You're demoralized, Skip, because they're like running the ball. At least give you like, okay, we were in position. We just should have got to knock that play down. how do you not be, if a team's running the ball like this, how do you say we got to get in better position? They're just lining up. And the thing is, Skip, the Deebo Samuels, I mean, because you're going one way, you're like, okay, yeah, here they come this way. And the next thing you know, he popped the ball up to Deebo, and Deebo's going the other way. And Deebo, he gets the ball, he's a running back. He ain't looking to juke you. He's running people over. So now they might pull Deebo Samuels and Juszczyk and Mostert, and you got two guys out there. He hits a crease. It's a touchdown. Skip, the way Kyle is calling this, well, if you're not going to make, sure, Kyle learned his lesson from that Super Bowl, Skip. You're never going to have to say Kyle Shanahan should run the football more.
That's true.
You will never,
That's
ever.
A good point.
You will never,
He showed you in the second half yesterday, I'm just not going to throw it.
I'm not going to throw it.
Well, like what Terry asked him post-game, he's like, you ran all over them. Well, it was working. Like, why stop? Why would you stop? What's working so well?
Exactly.
Good point. Tevin Coleman could be a big loss because it looked like he really hurt his shoulder.
Yeah, it looked like he
did. Say last
night.
Right. But again, this kid is running so hot right now, and Breida is still there. And like you say, you can get other people involved in the run game. I just think Kansas City, who finished 26th against the rush, is going to have a hard time. But could we hark back to Aaron Rodgers on opening Thursday night? Do you remember against the Bears what they did? Because they did play defense that night. And after the game, Aaron was, it was an NBC interview. Do you remember what he said? If we could see that, please.
There were some offensive struggles running it this first time. So when you watch the film back, what are you going to be looking for?
Well, that defense is going to give a lot of teams struggles. They're a very talented team. I had a couple real bad throws. We're off, out of sync at times, but we got a defense. We kept saying in the huddle, like, hey, let's pick our defense up. Let's just get one drive together. And we backed up. We finally put together a drive, got a field goal out of it, but it didn't matter. I mean, those guys, Mike Pettin and his staff, unbelievable job. It's fun to watch.
We got a defense.
I lied. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.
Well, at several key moments through the year, they did have a defense when they really needed a defense. But that was Mitchell Trubisky.
Yes, that's
right?
Chicago Bears offense.
Right.
That's not Cal. Skip, because you remember last year when Jimmy G tore his knee, he was winning games and C.J. Beathard was throwing for 300 yards. You're like, how's he doing this with these guys? So you know if he had a decent quarterback, what he's capable of doing if he can do that with guys that really should not be playing. So, yes, they had a deep. But Skip, I was, and I told you, I was like, I like them because, but when I see them go on the road, they struggle against teams. They did come out here to the Chargers and got the doors blown off them. And Phillip Rivers is just, you talk about a slot machine and turning the ball over. He will literally give you the ball. He'll pay you to take it off his hands.
So back to our point of contention all year, I still say Aaron is in decline.
He's not.
He had another rough game yesterday, and to your point, he made a couple of good throws in the second half, but if we could, like the early intercept, the one in the second quarter, that's just not the Aaron Rodgers we used to know and occasionally love. This is just so bad. It's so behind the receiver. It's such a bad idea. And the game was still kind of hanging in the balance there, and that's just like where the Packers say, ugh.
Even if you don't get points, you just can't allow the 49ers to get any more
They went right down and scored the other way.
Right, so now, exactly.
And remember, Aaron had 3 fumbles yesterday, and he lost only one of them, if we could just see them in order.
Right.
But again, this is not clean Aaron Rodgers that we used to trust. Okay, so he gets stripped on that one, and actually they got it back. Here's the strip again. This is not the guy who's as confident in the pocket, getting rid of the football as we used to see. That was just the fumble snap, and they lost that one. And then we have another strip sack. And we have another recovery by the Green Bay Packers, but another one. And then he missed the 2, we don't need to see it, but the 2-point conversion pass that could have made it kind of interesting. He just threw it completely behind Devontae.
But Skip, we talked about his defense. His defenses hadn't been very good. This is the 5th time his defense has given up at least 37 points in a playoff game, tied with the most ever for Dan Marino. On average, his defense allowed 27 points per game, which is the most in NFL history. In his 8 losses, his defense is allowing 36 points per game, which is the most in playoff history. Nobody's overcoming that. Not Patrick Mahomes, because we saw what happened last year when his defense gave up 34. They lost. I mean, they gave up 36 because, 37. What, 36? 37.
Which one, at New England?
In the playoff game because they scored in overtime. Skip, the likelihood of you overcoming your team giving up on average in 8 losses, 36 points is not very good. Aaron Rodgers would have had to been 2011 Aaron Rodgers, the 45-6 where he was basically unbeatable.
Yeah. All I know is he now is 1-3 in NFC Championship games, and the one came when Jay Cutler was on the bicycle the second half, and he barely overcame Caleb Haney. Yeah. So I don't
know what you want him to do with Skip. Think about it. His defenses is giving up on average 27 points a game, and in the losses, 36. Now, can remember that I know a guy that when his defense gave up 41, he caught an L.
Yeah, and he put up 33. You mean the guy who threw for a playoff record 505 yards, Tom Brady?
But my point is that when your defense consists, remember he gave up there's another game he gave up 51 against Arizona. It's hard for you to overcome this. It's hard for overcoming. Did Aaron play great? No, those are empty calories. He had a Dak Prescott game. There's a Dak Prescott. They call it a Prescott.
You're just going to throw that in there?
They call it a Prescottian.
Wait,
that's what they call it, a Prescottian.
Dak had 463 against Green Bay.
And called an L. And the same thing, Aaron was 31 of 39, but at one point in time, he was down what, Skip? 27-0. At one point in time, Dak Prescott was down what, Skip? 31-3. So they call it a Prescottian. It's when you throw for a bunch of yards and it don't mean a thing.
Let's talk about some teams that will be at the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl 54 matchup is officially